It was so callous, like she was an animal, just murdered in cold blood.
A brutal killing.
We were all floored. She was very beautiful, just a sweetheart of a person.
A dark mystery with multiple suspects.
I mean, this guy matches so many people in Houston.
His close relationship with her would have provided for opportunity. You have the woman scorned. She started acting crazy.
Here's a man that just killed his girlfriend. He's telling us this.
The truth will be revealed.
We asked him, do you have any idea who may want to harm Jennifer Lewis? And without hesitation, he said yes.
Every day in North America, dozens of people are murdered. The key to solving the toughest of these homicides lies in the final 24 hours of the victim's life. To crack the case, detectives must reconstruct that critical timeline. The minutes and hours containing evidence that can help unlock the mystery and catch the killer. Houston, Texas. The southern metropolis. Home to 2.3 million.
Houston is a fine city. I love it. Lots of good people here. But it's one of the largest cities in the United States. And so you're gonna find, crime.
There is no community that I'm aware of that all good people are in. It just doesn't happen. And some of these cases are really horrifying.
Even for experienced detectives, some murders stand out.
We had a young female walking along with a friend from a parking lot to the front door of Houston Community College for Health Professions. And all of a sudden, she's shot in the back.
The victim is 27-year-old nursing student Jennifer Lewis.
By the time homicide investigators got there, Miss Lewis had been transported to the hospital.
She was dead on arrival.
Homicide investigator Clarence Douglas begins the search for her killer.
Jennifer's case was one of those horrible cases. Why would someone want to shoot this young woman that's going to a nursing school to be an RN?
We were 6 weeks from graduation. Going around innocently in life, thinking nothing like this will happen to me. Jennifer and I met as nursing students. It was an automatic chemistry. We would study together. We would talk about these transitional issues of 20-year-old women, boyfriends, and dreams and hopes. Jennifer was energy in a human being. She was just like a magnet.
Here you had a woman that was innocent, totally innocent. And then all of a sudden, this tragic event takes place.
Investigators begin the task of tracing the last 24 hours of Jennifer's young life, starting with the shooting itself.
We knew that we had a witness, Cheryl Allen, that was walking right beside Jennifer.
That day we drove up to school. We parked in our normal spot, hopped out. The day was bright. There was lots of people, school buses. We had our arms intertwined, and we both heard this loud blast. I said to her, "Did you hear that car backfire?" There was seconds of a pause, and she says, "No, I've been shot." And when she said that, her body immediately got limp, very heavy, and she couldn't take any more steps. So I laid her down, and everything slowed down. It was a very beautiful day in the midst of an extremely tragic scene.
From all appearances, Jennifer did not know the shooter because when she was shot, she said, "That man shot me." She didn't call out a name or anything. At that point, Cheryl could see the blood coming out of her chest there, the front of her chest. Cheryl was trying to help Jennifer.
I said to the teacher that was doing CPR, "Stop, she's dead." When I looked in her eyes, I just already knew she was present with the Lord. I did see a figure running away from the corner of my left eye.
But she couldn't really get a good look at him because she was trying to assist Jennifer. We have witnesses that heard the gunshot and then saw the shooter run away. Told us he wasn't afraid to be seen. All the witnesses agree that it was a thin black male. They agreed that he had a dark hat on his head. It's not that he walked with a limp or he had one arm. I mean, this guy matches so many people in Houston.
Witness accounts do yield a key detail.
After the shooting, he ran and got into a red car, and as the red car sped off.
We weren't close enough to see who was in the car. They could only see a silhouette of the driver. At this point, everybody's a suspect. Everybody.
Detective Douglas turns his attention to the crime scene.
Containing the crime scene is very difficult because the containment starts when the first officer arrives on the scene. Things that happened prior to his arrival, we can't control that. Things like the nurses, instructors that came out to give Jennifer CPR and tried to keep her breathing.
When a crime scene has been altered, either because of resuscitative efforts or because she was shot while she was in this crowd, it makes the crime scene workup much more challenging.
One of the things that you look for at a shooting scene is firearms evidence. We didn't find any spent shell at the scene. So we believed that it would be a revolver, not a semi-automatic weapon. But also, there was no bullet. It went from her back through her chest. It came out right below the neckline here. You couldn't find the bullet because there was so much going on at the scene. But from the size of the exit wound and the travel of the bullet from the back to front, the estimate was that it was a .38 caliber handgun.
Homicide investigators found her cell phone. She was carrying a lunch with her, and that was found there. When you don't have direct evidence to connect to a suspect, it can be very challenging for homicide investigators to develop leads because it is a real whodunit.
There is one conclusion they can draw.
There was no confrontation at all with the shooter. No words spoken. The person with Jennifer was not harmed. This was a hit on Jennifer alone. Somebody hated her. So we had the challenge of finding out who that hater was. To try to solve a case like that in a huge city the size of Houston, we knew it was going to be difficult. So you got to go figure out who does she associate with, who is her friends, who is her enemies.
Cheryl gives detectives insight into Jennifer's timeline.
Every day, I would pick her up before school started. School started in the afternoon, something like 5, and her home was in the direction of the school, so it was nothing for me to go by there. That day, she needed me to drop her boyfriend off at home.
Melvin Reed was an associate minister at a church in Houston. And he had a good job as a postal worker. He met Miss Jennifer Lewis at church, and things took off from there. She was going to marry Mr. Reed.
Cheryl told us that she picked Jennifer and Melvin up, and they drove Melvin to his apartment. Then Cheryl drove her straight to the parking lot of the school.
So he's on the timeline, very close on the timeline, and he would know her daily routine. He knew how she traveled, and he knew that she would be going to school on certain days and at certain hours.
It's often standard to investigate the spouse or partner of a victim for a number of reasons. Primarily is because that person may be the one responsible for the murder. They may have hired someone to commit the murder, and police have to pursue that. They have to go down that avenue and see if that person has any sort of direct or indirect involvement in the crime.
Detectives discover Melvin recently filed a police report that his gun has gone missing.
It was suspicious. It could be, you're dealing also with human emotions. So they needed to take a closer look at his relationship with her.
Detectives investigating the murder of Jennifer Lewis have identified their first person of interest, her boyfriend, Melvin Reed.
What you do in that case, you talk with him and you ask him questions. Did you have anything to do with her getting shot? She just left your place. Have you had any arguments with her?
Police asked Melvin for his account of what happened in the hours before the murder.
You said they read the Bible. Jennifer got ready for school. Cheryl picked them up. And they drove Melvin to his apartment. Jennifer waited for Melvin to run upstairs and get his cell phone and bring it back to her. They embraced one another, kissed. Cheryl and Jennifer drove off.
Melvin denies any knowledge of a red getaway vehicle and says he had no means of getting to campus.
Either he didn't have a car or his car was in the shop being repaired.
He said that when the shooting happened, he had just been dropped off, and he received a call from a relative of Jennifer telling him that Jennifer had been shot. There was very, very few cell phones at that time. So they called him at his landline, and he was home.
Police need to determine if Melvin had enough time to commit the murder.
Melvin's house back to campus was maybe 10 minutes.
We didn't think that he could follow them, shoot Jennifer, and run back to the house that quickly. And the gun that he had didn't really match. It's a .380 semi-automatic, not a revolver. Melvin was upset. He couldn't believe that this had happened to Jennifer. There was really no reason at that point to think that Melvin was actually involved. But we also had to look at other people that he may have been involved with or knew. When we asked him the question, do you have any idea who may want to harm Jennifer Lewis? Without hesitation, Melvin said yes. My ex-girlfriend, Sheila Dillard. She and I have a son together, but we've been separated for about a year. When he said that, it gets your attention. Why would he say that about his ex-girlfriend, the mother of his child?
The police will always look at family members to see who has an axe to grind. And it's usually pretty easy to find out because if you don't like a family member, those feelings aren't usually secrets.
What happened was Melvin and Sheila had broken off their relationship. But because they had a son together, they would see one another. Sheila still looked at him as her man.
Melvin recounts a specific incident from months before.
On one particular day, Melvin had his son, who he calls Little Melvin. He tells Sheila, when you come to pick up Little Melvin, call me. But instead of Sheila calling, when she got to the apartment, she went upstairs. She saw Jennifer. Melvin introduced her to Jennifer. It's my girlfriend. From that day, Sheila began to call him repeatedly. And then just before Valentine's Day, a few weeks before the murder, Sheila's over at Melvin's, and he tells her, I'm gonna ask Jennifer to marry me. Sheila was hysterical. She went into his apartment and she took a photograph that he had on his dresser there of Jennifer. And she ripped it apart.
Melvin reveals another key detail about the day of the murder.
That day, Jennifer told Melvin that she had received some telephone calls where the person would just hang up. Nobody was on the phone.
Those calls came between 2:30 and 5.
He suspected it was Sheila. But if Sheila Dillard had anything to do with Jennifer's death, she hired someone to do it because all the witnesses identified the shooter as a young black man.
So after talking to Melvin, you have to talk to Sheila. And that was the next step that we did in this investigation. She agreed to come down to the Homicide Division. We talked to Sheila extensively. Her alibi was I was at home fixing my mother's hair.
Detectives need to confirm her alibi with her mother.
The mother was an angry person.
Police went to Sheila's mother's house and there was a big argument.
When people prevent you from doing your job, that's borderline obstructionist. But it's rare for the police, even with all the lying that goes on, to charge people. Because if you start charging people for lying to you, then you may have people who will not cooperate with you down the road.
We still had to get more information on Sheila. So We asked her if she would take a polygraph test.
Guilty people sometimes put themselves forward and willingly offer to do a lie detector test or a polygraph. And the reason they do this is because they're basically saying, look, I'm innocent, I didn't do it. And I'm willing to do this test as a means of covering for themselves.
She admitted that, yeah, I was upset. Melvin hurt me. And she said she wanted to go back with Melvin. That was her child's father, and she wanted to be with him. We asked her, did you shoot Jennifer Lewis? Do you know who shot Jennifer Lewis? Were you there when Jennifer Lewis was shot and killed? All those questions were asked, and she passed all those questions according to the examiner, as showing that she was not involved. We knew Sheila didn't shoot her, but we believed she somehow had some kind of connection, and we still had to figure out what that was. We wanted more direct information that would try to connect her to that red car, to the shooter. Sheila had a small Ford, and it was kind of a goldish color. And she denied having anything to do with the red car. So we called a special unit that's attached to Houston Police Department and asked them if they would do surveillance for us.
As they do so, detectives receive a new lead.
Another officer that worked the street in uniform called us and said, you need to look at Jennifer's ex-boyfriend. His name is John Johnson.
I remember her talking about him a lot. It was months before Melvin. I don't know quite how to define the relationship, but they were extremely fond of each other. She talked about him all the time. They did a lot of writing. She never talked about any specifics.
They discovered that Johnson murdered his girlfriend, a woman named Paula Hunter.
Now, here's a man that just killed his girlfriend. We just wanted to get his side of the story as far as he and Jennifer was concerned. How did she fit into that murder?
Detectives follow up on Jennifer Lewis's ex-boyfriend, currently in jail for murder.
John Johnson had a girlfriend named Paula. He was also seeing Jennifer. One night, Jennifer spent the night with Johnson. Johnson gets up, takes Jennifer's car keys, and drives to his girlfriend Paula's. Ended up shooting and killing Paula. As he leaves, one of the witnesses writes down the license plate number. They put the license plate number on the police radio that came back to Jennifer Lewis on Daphne Street. The police go to Daphne Street and they question Jennifer about her car being at a murder scene. She tells the police she don't know anything about it because she didn't realize that he had taken her car. She talked John into, look, turn yourself in for what you've done. John turned himself in, and he was put in Harris County Jail where he was awaiting trial.
If Johnson knew that she would testify against him and provide damaging testimony to him, you would think that he probably would want to eliminate her, you know?
We learned that prior to his murder case, there was a civil case that John had received a $9,000 payment. Of course, we looked at that as a possibility that he could use this money maybe to harm Jennifer.
It's relatively common that a person in jail recruits somebody else to commit crimes on the outside. If you serve time in a federal penitentiary where other people around you are in there for violent crimes, it's easier than you might think to find somebody who's willing to kill somebody else for $2,000 or $3,000 or $4,000.
Detective Douglas pays Johnson a visit.
In the interview with John, John acknowledged, yeah, I did get that money. It was a civil case that I was involved in, and I gave the money to my mother.
Douglas probes into the pair's relationship.
John Johnson confirmed that he had been involved with Jennifer Lewis.
She would visit him every Tuesday and Friday. They also wrote letters back and forth. Now, here's a man that just killed his girlfriend. He's telling us this. I would never harm Jennifer. Jennifer was special.
Johnson shows police the letters she sent to his jail cell as evidence he's telling the truth.
He had no animosity toward Jennifer. There wasn't any ill feelings for him being in jail.
They find no evidence of a hired hit that would place him on the timeline.
They just could not make a direct connection between John Johnson and the murder of Jennifer Lewis.
You feel frustrated, but we still had a lot of work to do. Somewhere there's some connection from Jennifer to the person that shot her. What we have to do is to, through Jennifer's connections, put that person back at the scene shooting Jennifer.
As Douglas continues to probe, he gets a call from the surveillance team watching Sheila Dillard.
They watch people walking back and forth, people going up to the apartment and coming down. Then they see a small red vehicle pull in. They see the vehicle pick up 3 females. Take those females to a parking lot of a store. Sheila gets out of the car. The driver looks like a thin black male wearing a cap.
They knew that a red car was involved. Now they could connect the red car to Sheila Dillard.
Police surveillance has identified the potential getaway vehicle seen on the day of Jennifer's murder.
They got a license plate number. And that license plate number registered to a Broderick Franklin.
We ran Broderick through the national database. We found the location of where he lived with his mother. She said he doesn't live here anymore. I don't know where he is, but when he calls me, I'll tell him that you all want to talk to him. Wasn't long that Broderick did call us. Said, I heard you're looking for me, something about some murder or something, I don't know nothing about it. Well, we asked him if he'd come down and talk with us. Eventually he did come down. And he said, I don't know a Sheila. So, well, you dropped her off at her apartment on this day, at this time. You showed him a picture, I don't know her. Well, you picked up 3 females. Oh yeah, I remember that. I took them around the corner. But I don't know Sheila, and I don't know nothing about no murder.
Broderick says he was nowhere near Jennifer's college on the afternoon of the shooting.
So we asked him if you'd take a polygraph. Because your car, we believe that car was involved in the murder. He said, sure, I'd take a polygraph. He takes a polygraph, he passes. We said, okay, well, look, we need to examine your car. Would you allow us to do that? He said, well, that's gonna be a problem. Well, why is that a problem? Well, the car was burned up. What do you mean it was burned up? Oh, on May 8th, The car caught a fire down on Main. It burned up. We followed that lead. We went to a junkyard where the car was taken to, only to find out the car had been cut up into pieces. We couldn't examine the car to see if it would lead us back to the murder itself.
They had nothing to go on at this point. I mean, they had no evidence to tie him to the scene. So they was back to square one.
So what do? You continue to work, you continue to look at your case. You cannot harass the suspects, you can't harass the witnesses. So you have to wait.
The months after Jennifer's murder, you're not the same. Nothing's the same. I would stop by from time to time to see her family. My father would call the police station just as much as her father would, wanting to know what happened, because we all did not know why, who. Was it random? So you have all of these questions. I remember being angry. How this could have happened, not a clue. And I just can remember being really so naive, not to think that that type of evil would cross your path.
These cases are not easy. When you get working in homicide, you know right away that your responsibility is first to the victim and to the victim's family and to the rest of the community. The families always want clarity. I felt frustrated, but I never lost faith. You just have to do your job and try not to leave any stone unturned.
13 months after the murder of Jennifer Lewis, investigator Douglas receives an unusual call.
Patrick Curry was a jail inmate at Harris County Jail. He talked to a deputy, told him that he had information regarding the girl that got killed about a year ago at the school. And he wanted to talk to the homicide detectives. You have to be suspicious, but you have to also interview that person and find out what it is they want to tell you.
A jailhouse informant is the lowest of the low. You cannot trust a single word they say unless it can be corroborated by external pieces of evidence. The simple reason is, if you're in jail, you'll do whatever you can to get out of there earlier.
He was, very calm. He said that a couple of days or a day after the girl got shot, he said Sheila came to their house. And Sheila tell her friend, Samara, come here, I want to talk to you. They went into the bedroom. He said he listened at the door.
He and Sheila Dillon and his friend talking about the death of Jennifer Lewis.
Patrick Curry said you need to talk to his friend, Samara Dobbins. He believed that she knew what was going on, she knew what had happened. That was really like a bell going off. Wait a minute. Samara is a young lady that I knew from working in uniform.
Douglas's knowledge stems from Samara's long history of drug abuse.
A homicide investigator went to visit Samara at the rehab facility.
I decided, since I knew her so well, that I would not interview her. I wanted someone else to interview her to see what she would say. What you're looking for in that interview is something that Samara can tell us about the murder that we don't know, that has not been on the television, that has not been printed in the news media, that has not been on the radio. We learned that Samara had been staying with Sheila for a while. She said that the day that Jennifer was killed, she was watching little Melvin. She said Sheila left in the morning, driving her car. Sheila came back late in her little red car.
This blows a hole in Sheila's alibi and clearly links her to a car similar to the one used in the murder.
Sheila was very upset. She was pacing back and forth. Sheila told her, she said, "I got that bitch."
Detectives honing in on murder suspect Sheila Dillard have found a witness who can break apart her story.
Sheila tells Samara what had happened. Samara was friends with Sheila's brother, Darryl Dillard. The day before, Sheila had gone to the crack house where Darryl was selling drugs. At the crack house that day, Darryl introduced Sheila to a man they call a hitman, Gary Chop.
Here, Sheila made the deal that would seal the fate of Jennifer Lewis.
Sheila paid Darryl $700. Darryl was going to get $400. Chop was going to get $300.
It was so cold-blooded and callous. The amount of money that was exchanged between the mastermind and the hitman were ridiculously low.
Samara provides the final pieces of the puzzle, explaining what happened as Jennifer's timeline wound down to zero.
Sheila had written down Jennifer's address from a letter that she had seen in Melvin's apartment. She knew the phone number. Sheila and Chop decided to call the house and see if Jennifer was there. Jennifer comes to the phone, and they hung the phone up. They drove over to Daphne Street where they parked, and they watched the house. The red car belonged to Darryl's girlfriend.
Cheryl shows up, Jennifer and Melvin gets in the car, and they drives off.
So they followed Jennifer to Melvin's apartment. And they watched Melvin get out of the back seat. Jennifer and Melvin hugged each other and kissed. Jennifer gets back into the car. They drive off to the school. So they follow them. She said that she told Chop, "There she go, can you get her?" So Chop said, "Yeah, I can get her." Chop got out and he walked in the parking lot. He shot him. Chop came running back. He jumps in the car and he tells her, "Go, go, go."
Sheila's brother Darryl then disposes of the gun.
And Darryl throws it into the bayou. I tried to get the dive team to locate the gun, but the gun was never found.
Samara says that Sheila claims to have passed her polygraph by mixing anxiety medication with beer.
It's possible with the spectrum of therapeutic drugs out there that there can be a medication that could reduce the anxiety and therefore allowing somebody to pass it even though they're not being truthful. Another possibility here is that she passed the polygraph test because she's a pathological liar.
Police now have everything they need.
They got an arrest warrant for Sheila Dillard, her brother Dale Dillard, and Gary Lane Chop.
Sheila was found in Melvin's bed when we arrested her. The fact that Melvin said over and over that he was going to marry Jennifer, and to learn later, started a sexual relationship again with Sheila. That was very upsetting. We secured confessions from Sheila and Chop. The only reason that Sheila could give was it's her jealous rage. She wanted Melvin, and she was going to do anything to get him.
Sheila Dillard figured by having Jennifer Lewis murdered, she could continue to be with Melvin Reed. In the end, she lost because she went to prison. Sheila Dillard pled guilty to murder. She was given 50 years. Gary Lane Chop pled for life in prison. Dale Dillard, her brother, he went to trial. He was found guilty of tampering with evidence, and he was given 20 years in prison. Jennifer, her life was so precious and ended, all because a woman could not accept the fact that her lover had decided to move on.
Several days before Jennifer and I were driving somewhere carrying on our 20-year-old shenanigans, and she said to me, if I died, Cheryl, today or tomorrow, it'll be okay. And I said, why would you say something like that? She says, I know that heaven is my home, and it'll be okay. And I didn't know that she was speaking to me then. About today. And she needed me to know that she was going to be okay.